Welcome to Hidden Past, where histories are uncovered. Before diving into one of the most astonishing and hidden clashes of modern times, let me ask you, if you enjoy uncovering powerful, untold stories like this one, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a forgotten history episode. Now, let's uncover the extraordinary Battle of Kashan, where a handful of Americans took on overwhelming odds in eastern Syria. On the evening of February 7, 2018, deep in the oil-rich deserts of eastern Syria, a small group of about 40 U.S. troops, special operators and artillery teams, took up defensive positions at a gas facility near the town of Kashan. Their mission was to confront ISIS threats and maintain peace inside a delicate deconfliction zone established between the U.S. and Russia. Nothing about that night was meant to stand out. Then it did. Suddenly, a force exceeding 500 enemy fighters, supported by Russian-made tanks, artillery, and drones, fired the first shots against the U.S. outpost. But these attackers weren't ISIS fighters, they were Russian mercenaries affiliated with the Wagner Group, a shadowy private military organization with deep Kremlin links. What followed would turn into one of the most one-sided battles kept largely hidden from the public eye. And here's the twist: this took place during President Donald Trump's first term, the very man often labeled by the media as Putin's puppet who, surprisingly, authorized this battlefield action. What truly occurred at Kashan? How did a tiny U.S. force, outnumbered more than tenfold, repel an assault involving tanks, drones, and artillery? And why did the American media barely report this uneven and brutal fight? Today, we explore all of this. I'm Mike Joberg, Marine Corps veteran and filmmaker, guiding you through the details on this episode of Forgotten History. By 2018, Syria was a fractured chaos zone. The conflict split into three primary factions: Assad clinging to power with Russian and Iranian backing, U.S.-supported Kurdish and Syrian democratic forces battling ISIS remnants, and ISIS itself, diminished but still volatile. Eastern Syria was a battleground of oil fields, airstrikes, and fractured ceasefires. To prevent direct U.S.-Russian clashes, both powers agreed to a deconfliction line, an invisible border cutting across the desert. American and Allied forces controlled the east, Assad's regime and Russian support held the west. Both sides recognized this boundary and were committed to respecting it. So when Russian tanks and artillery units began moving eastward across this line toward a U.S.-held gas plant near Kashan, the message was clear. These weren't official Russian soldiers. Instead, they were Wagner Group fighters, ex-military, special forces veterans, convicts, and mercenaries assembled into a covert private military company, funded by a Putin affiliate, trained with Russian resources, and sent to do Kremlin's dirty work without official accountability. For months, the Wagner Group had swept through Syria, capturing oil fields on Assad's behalf. That gas plant at Kashan? It sat atop some of eastern Syria's most valuable territory. Thus, on February 7th, they advanced. Tanks, artillery, drones, and over 500 combatants. Their goal: seize the plant, eliminate or drive off American forces, and erase evidence of the operation. They assumed the U.S. would back down. They badly miscalculated. At 10 p.m., the first shells landed near the Conoco gas facility. American troops immediately called it in. Enemy tanks and infantry were crossing inside the deconfliction zone, blatantly ignoring the agreed boundaries. U.S. forces phoned the Russian command center one final time. "Are those your troops?" they asked. "No troops in the area," came the reply. That cleared the way. Within minutes, the 40-man U.S. contingent, comprising Delta Force operators, Green Berets, Marine Forward Observers, and Army Joint Terminal Attack Controllers, secured their perimeter and initiated one of the most efficient and deadly kill-box operations in recent military history. Overhead, AC-130 gunships circled, Reaper drones gave live targeting data, and Apache helicopters swept the battlefield's edges. From a nearby firebase, Marine artillery crews from 1st Battalion, 10th Marines adjusted their howitzers with unerring precision. Every incoming assault was met with brutal firepower, carefully tracked, mapped, bracketed, and destroyed in real time. The attackers' convoy was decimated. T-72 tanks were eliminated from above, infantry lines shredded by 105mm cannon fire from the gunships, drones hunted fleeing enemy fighters, cutting them down before they could regroup. One U.S. Army officer described the scene as a turkey shoot. Another said, "They kept coming in waves, and we kept stacking the bodies." For over 4 hours, this vastly outnumbered American team orchestrated deadly air and artillery strikes flawlessly. The attackers never breached closer than 200 meters to the gas plant, and U.S. forces suffered 0 casualties. When the fighting stopped, over 300 Wagner fighters lay dead, dozens more wounded, and the survivors scattered in retreat. Though one-sided, the battle was far from over because the real fight shifted from battlefield to media and government offices in Washington and Moscow. The aftermath swiftly turned tense. Russia's initial response? Deny everything. They insisted the Wagner Group acted independently, with no formal state ties. Unofficial mercenaries, operating off the books, Russian rogues equipped with tanks, artillery, and drone support. Putin himself said nothing. Russian media barely mentioned the clash, no funerals, no ceremonies, no flag-draped coffins. In the US, no celebrations. No public naming of enemy forces. The Pentagon acknowledged the firefight but only labeled the enemy as pro-regime forces. No formal press briefings. No patriotic rallies. Just a terse statement and an immediate shutdown of the story. Why? Because if the truth came out, U.S. troops obliterated Russian fighters in Syria. That's no catchphrase. That's potentially declaring war. Now here's the awkward truth no one wanted discussed. This happened under President Donald Trump's first term, the very leader half the country branded as Putin's stooge. While cable news endlessly obsessed over alleged Russian collusion, and late-night hosts mocked Trump's supposed Kremlin softness, he ordered the killing of more than 300 Russian mercenaries in a single night without hesitation. No apologies. No second thoughts. Remember his predecessor, Obama, nicknamed Barry by insiders? He drew a red line over chemical weapon use. Assad crossed it, gassing 1,400 civilians with sarin, and nothing substantial followed. Under Trump, no red lines. Only green lights. With a battlefield littered with Russian corpses. So both Moscow and Washington chose silence. Russia suppressed the story, it made them look weak. U.S. media ignored the event, it didn't fit the established political narrative. The president wasn't supposed to stand tough against Russia. For years, he was called a Kremlin puppet. Yet here he was, killing hundreds of Putin's men. The story simply faded away. The dead were buried with it. America's largest victory over Russian forces since the Cold War never hit the evening news. No parades. No Hollywood blockbusters. No headlines screaming, 40 Americans wipe out 300 Russian fighters in 5 hours. Acknowledging this would have shattered many dominant narratives in Washington and on cable TV. So the Battle of Kashan wasn't denied. It was erased. Yet for the soldiers on the ground, this wasn't about politics. It was about holding their ground. They didn't just survive. They didn't just win. They utterly crushed a force 10 times their size with surgical precision. In the darkness. With the world watching but not seeing. To this day, the U.S. government has never released an official after-action report. Enemy casualties remain classified. Most Americans have never even heard of Kashan. But make no mistake, this was a victory. Not simply on the battlefield, but in a silent war of pressure, restraint, and secrecy. Like many great victories, it was neither celebrated nor remembered. What are your thoughts on the Battle of Kashan, fought by Putin's shadow army? Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you have comments or ideas for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks again.